Mr. Christoph Vandenberg. Mr. Christoph Vandenberg is the chief of the section for Earth Science and Geohazard Risk Reduction and secretary of the International Geoscience and Geopark program since June last year. Before that, he was the chief of the executive office of the natural sciences sector at the Unesco for 2 years, and he was science advisor in the cabinet of the Director General of Unesco. Mr. Vandenberg joined UNESCO in 2011 in the Bureau for Strategic Planning, but started his career in the Research and Development Department of the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries of Flanders, and moved into Foreign Affairs Office, where he worked as a diplomat representing the Flemish government to UNESCO, OECD, and the Council of Europe. He obtained a degree in biotechnology engineering at the University of Ghent. Now the floor is yours, Christoph.
Thank you very much, Soichiro, and thanks for having me here. I hope my voice goes through clear. It's a pleasure for me, and I'm very happy as well to see some familiar faces, some familiar names. So I'm looking forward to engage in an interesting discussion with you this afternoon. While I'm trying to upload my presentation, let me say that I'm going to try to limit my presentation to 15 minutes, where I will first give a brief introduction to UNESCO's involvement in disaster risk reduction and tools that we have at our disposal for that. I'll then quickly provide a short overview of the context, in particular from a European perspective, basing myself on a couple of reports related to natural hazards, the environmental outlook, and all this in a perspective of rural areas. I'll then move to UNESCO's approach to ecosystem-based DRR to end with a couple of examples if the time allows for it. I hope that everyone sees my screen now. Maybe with this slide, we just wanted to remind all participants that yesterday we celebrated the International Disaster Risk Reduction Day. And that's a day that traditionally we use to raise awareness for this important topic. We just together with our partners, and in that sense, the motto of this year, it's all about governance, echoes very well with UNESCO's mandate. And I will explain this later, in our work on disaster risk reduction, we do try to target the objectives I've set in the SENDA framework, but also the Paris Climate Change Agreement, as well as other global agendas, in particular the SDGs, and also the CBD and the Convention on Biodiversity. So we try to tackle this from different aspects with all our partners in order to approach this in a holistic manner. Maybe for the people that are interested, we have set up a dedicated webpage which highlights all the different events that we're setting up yesterday, but also in the coming days. This event that we're having here today is one of those that we do in framework. And I think it gives a nice overview of what we're doing, but also what our field colleagues and our partners are doing in the sense. With this slide, we try to give a bit of an overview of UNESCO's involvement in disaster reduction in general. And to do this in a strategic manner, in order to avoid overlap, to coordinate ourselves well with other UN agencies and with other important actors in the field, we divided this in 8 specific themes. And the first one, for example, is on science, technology, and innovation for resilience, where, for example, and this is just one example, where we're exploring the options of artificial intelligence, for example, in the fight against disaster risk reduction. The second one is on early warning systems. And the most familiar here probably is the one tsunami warning system, but we also have systems to monitor drought or floods. And the third one, and I'm going quickly over it, is on the built environment. And this is something where, for example, my colleague Chiro is working on with his team as well. Not to forget, of course, the importance on education and school safety, where we do work with schools and try to build disaster risk reduction in school curricula, but we also have programs to look at the safety of school buildings and to see how well would withstand next coming disaster. And the fifth topic, of course, we focus on culture and on heritage, and we're pretty strong in that field. We have a very good team working on this. And then the sixth one is the theme that we're highlighting here today. It's on ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction, and I'll go a bit further in details on that later onwards. The seventh one is probably not our forte, it's the post-disaster response, but yet in the aftermath of several disasters, we have been involved in post-disaster needs assessments, try to play our role in order to engage with governments and then to prevent following disasters, following hazards. And then the last one is in particular risk governance, social resilience. We'll comment on this later as well, but this is something where UNESCO is putting its different sectors on education, but also on social sciences, our different partners, our different programs. And we highlighted a couple of those programs. We call this this is our science family. These are all intergovernmental and international programs that have existed already for over 50 years, and some of them. And they are actually our backbone. We rely on an extensive network of experts. And this is basically what is the strength and what allows us to make an impact on the fields. With this slide now, I'm moving towards the context here, in particular from a European perspective. These are some facts and figures. Well, I think for most of you it will not be a surprise, but these are some facts and figures from the European Environment Agency that looked at, well, what would I say? The most devastating disasters that happened to Europe over the last 25 years. Some of them will be familiar or still very fresh in the memory. And for example, on top of it, that was 2 weeks ago when an unprecedented flooding actually caused tremendous damage, but also loss of lives in the south of France. So it's clearly indicating that this kind of hazards will not only increase in the coming years, but it also will have a more severe impact over the years. Maybe just a few figures to support this. So you will see that hydrometeorological events, for example, account for 64% of reported damages. We also see that extreme temperature events cause the highest number of human fatalities. For example, the heat wave in the summer of 2003 caused over 70,000 excess deaths. And well, not a surprise probably either, but flooding and storms have been the most costly hazards. The overall losses recorded in the study period account for 52 billion euros for floods and 44 billion euros for storms. And all reports point in the direction that this will not get better. And the next slide here shows what this means for the rural environment. And again, I think for most of the participants, I don't have to convince you of the importance of rural areas in Europe. Of course, they provide us with food, with raw materials, with energy. But in addition to that, I think people are increasingly aware as well of the virtues of the rural areas. And I think the pandemic has been a bit of a wake-up call for this as well. If most urban populations have been locked down for several months, I think one of the first things they did once the lockdown was lifted was rushing back to the countryside, reconnecting with the nature. And I think that that is something that has changed somewhat the paradigm as well. And you see it as well. I mean, I'm talking here now of our host tributes here in France as well. A revival of rural areas, revived interest in rural areas. And I think there is also an increased understanding of the power of rural areas, not only in food production, because people probably realize as well now more than ever how strongly we are connected and dependent on rural areas for food production. And you don't want to be dependent for your food production on international trade, but also on the strength of rural areas when it comes to combating disasters or when it comes to preserving our biodiversity. And then this is a slide that comes from a very recent report. I invite you to have a look at it. We can share maybe the link to the report. So it's a report that was issued in September, so a month ago, on the European environment outlook. It's basically looking forward to what Europe will look like, what our environment will look like over the next years. Actually, it's a process all the way till the end of the century. But I think the most sense is what will happen between here and the next coming 30 years. It's not exactly bedtime literature. I wouldn't read it to your kids because it gives a bit of a dark picture. And I hope we don't grow used to this kind of reports, because indeed the IPCC report that was issued earlier, the IPCC reports, they all point in the same direction. I would like to highlight maybe a little bit the positive sparkles of news in here. And we see that, for example, in Europe, that we're not doing all too bad protecting territorial areas, marine protected areas. Overall, we're not doing bad either in the energy transition. We're not there yet, but at least you see a beginning of a movement. And I think UNESCO is drawing lessons from this as well. And that's why we have such an interest as well in sites. And I will come back to this later, but UNESCO has traditionally invested a lot in World Heritage sites, and lots of them are natural World Heritage sites. But also since 1971, we have been working on what we call the Man in the Biosphere program, where we foster a network, now 101 Biosphere Reserve. And the most recent addition to that are the UNESCO Global Geoparks, which were brought under the wings of UNESCO since 2015. They existed a bit longer already. But I think with those 3 different site nominations, we have an ability to connect the communities and to see how actually we can preserve the biological diversity, the cultural diversity as well as the geological diversity of those territories, and at the same time reconcile this with a sustainable economic income, because eventually that's the issue. Many of these problems that are highlighted here to left, they all connect in one way or another to our business model and to our lifestyles, and to change that will take much more than just technological solutions. We'll have to ensure that we can connect with the communities, that we connect with the schools, with students, with the next generation as well. So this slide is just to show UNESCO's interest in ecosystem disaster risk reduction. And it's a little bit of a logic consequence of what I've just explained. We are not blind for the virtues of these nature-based solutions for disaster reduction. It is something that we have been experimenting with for decades now. And you see as well that it's getting increasing attention in global agendas and the SDGs, but also in other reports and other global commitments. And only right so. I think you see as well that over the last, dramatic events and disasters that happen, that governments start realizing more and more that grey solutions are not the only solution. You cannot resolve everything with dikes. You cannot resolve a thing with large infrastructure works or with engineered solutions. And that there's a lot to be learned from good solutions. And that's why our motto is here, consider green before investing in grey. And very often a combination of both, a hybrid model, will probably be the solution for the future. In particular, as many of these nature-based solutions only cost a fraction of grey solutions. I hear somebody speak on the background. If the person can maybe mute as well, thank you. Then with this slide, quickly wanted to show the 3 different axes on which UNESCO works when we consider ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction. We're looking in the first place on advocacy, on outreach. And we use, of course, our wealth of partners and programs. The fact that we are in touch with many governments, of course, help this as well. But we also work on knowledge gathering, knowledge exchange, good practices, for example, on ecosystem disaster risk reduction. And there again, we rely very strongly on our sites, be it the geoparks, the biosphere reserves, or the World Heritage sites. And then, of course, where possible, we also provide technical advice. We provide training, capacity building, very often as well in cooperation with our sites. I'll quickly go in each and every of these aspects. For example, on the advocacy, well, of course, we have social media campaigns, but we also work very much with scientific reports, which echo really in the scientific community, but also at policy level. I would like to lift maybe the one there on the very left, nature-based solutions for water. That was the World Water Development Report in 2008 was dedicated to this subject. Very often, water management relies on grey solutions, on concrete, on large infrastructure works. But there as well, there's this report gives a very good overview of what's happening worldwide on nature-based solutions, and I think it's a pretty good guidance for policymakers, decision makers, to consider other solutions or at least hybrid models. But of course, it is also an element that we take up in our policy when we engage with indigenous people, because many of these technologies are based on traditions, on traditional knowledge, on traditional practice. And so there as well, we try to learn from the past. We try to learn from practices. The report at the right is interesting as well, because we have several projects on eco hydrology, and actually we work with a number of sites worldwide where we put in practice nature-based solutions and where we use these sites to the maximum to demonstrate to a wide public the virtues. This, of course, as I said already, in addition to the sites, and this is something that we do together with Armament and the Biosphere, the Parks Program, and the World Heritage Center. Now, if my time is still allowing me, I would quickly like to bring you to a few places in the world and to travel quick here to the left. That's the Dong Vang Geopark in Vietnam. Which has a traditional practice in rice terraces, but due to deforestation, they were increasingly exposed to landslides, and so they have explored the plantation of vetiver grass, which is a deep-rooting tropical grass, and that allows actually to fix the soil to prevent disasters. A very similar practice has been used over the ages in the Philippines, and that's a World Heritage Site, the Cordilleras, where actually that area was a little bit abandoned for a certain period. There was people were fleeing to the city, leaving countryside, but there's been a renewed interest also because these terraces not only protect against natural hazards, but of course because of their beauty and because of their historical importance. They also attract tourists again, and actually were the beginning of a revival of that rural area. I give a slide not because the actual practice is so exceptional, it's just it's a wetland preservation area. But these are the Wadden Islands, which is a territory shared between three countries, that's Denmark, Germany, and the Netherlands. And this is so exceptional because actually set up a scientific cooperation model that involves scientists from these three countries to see how they can protect these wetlands, also knowing that we'll be increasingly exposed to, in particular, to winter surges, to winter storms. So the unique cooperation model is something that we take as a good practice and try to replicate elsewhere. This is a slide that I put in here as well because it's a biosphere reserve. It's about 10 kilometers below Vienna. It's a wetland. It's a wetland that traditionally has served as a buffer to avoid the Danube River floods Vienna, the city. But at the same time, it is an area where people come to rest, to come to reconnect with nature, and it's considered as a biological hotspot because it has a unique diversity of fauna and flora. I think those, yes, this is a geopark. This is a geopark in Portugal. This is Isla, which is unique because it's a traditional pastoral landscape where you see that actually it's a patchwork and where forests are cut by agricultural ground. So you have open spaces which actually prevent the spread of fires. And so this area has been remarkably preserved while other areas of Portugal have gone up in flames. And so they are trying to export this knowledge, this practice. Yesterday, for example, in the frame of the International Disaster Risk Reduction Day, they set up a webinar in particular on this subject to see how to prevent a wildfire in Portugal. So this is an important role that parks play as well as this outreach and the sharing of good practices. This is a well, very quickly, the one on the top is a mangrove project in one of the biosphere reserves in Thailand, the Ranang Biosphere Reserve. I don't have to explain you probably virtues of mangroves, but of course they do help against tsunamis, against floods, but they also provide alternative income to local populations, amongst others through tourism, bird watching, and of course they're also the breeding grounds for fish. So there's a lot of spillover effects, side effects to these nature-based solutions have to be taken into account when considering an investment in this. This is certainly a good example. The one below is probably known to everyone. That's the Great Barrier Reef, which is a World Heritage Site. A World Heritage Site that sometimes, well, it is considered as under threat from different dangers, not in the least seawater temperature rise. But there, well, we're working together with researchers to see how we can strengthen the coral reefs, amongst others by investing research in corals that are resistant to temperature rise, and so to protect the reef and as such protect the coast as well against floods and against tsunamis. So this brings me to my last slide, and I'm proud that we can be part of this project. This is the OPERANDUM project, and Silvana will explain more details what the project, the objectives of the project, and what how it functions. But it started in 2018. We have been, as UNESCO, closely involved and learned from it as well. We are engaged in collecting science evidence for the use of these nature-based solutions and sharing the good practices and reaching out with our partners, with our scientific community, and see as well what can be learned and what we can replicate as well. And to a certain extent as well to train people. And we have been engaged, for example, with the Biosphere Reserve network in training them on practices that were observed in under this project. I leave it at this, but of course I remain available for any questions you may have, and I wish you a very fruitful afternoon and an interesting discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christophe, for your introduction of the global and European regional overview of the nature-based solutions beyond the OPERANDUM project, as well as, of course, the UNESCO's engagement of these solutions. Please be reminded that we're going to have a question and answer sessions after the second presentations. So please write your questions in the chat box, and we will collect them to pass them to the speakers after the second speaker. Now I will present our second speaker, Professor Silvana Di Sabatino from University of Bologna. Professor Silvana Di Sabatino is a coordinator of the OPERANDUM project and professor of atmospheric physics at the University of Bologna. She teaches boundary layer physics and turbulent dispersions, dynamic meteorology and climatology, and holds a PhD from University of Cambridge, UK, in the area of environmental fluid mechanism. Her current research relates to urban microclimate and its interconnection with climate variability, city breathability, and its connection with urban planning. Among her research interests, there is the development of tools to connect basic research with applied science closely related to respond to the needs of modern society. Silvana is a co-editor-in-chief of the Bulletin of Atmosphere Science and Technology, Springer Nature, and she has co-authored more than 100 scientific publications, of which over 50 in peer-reviewed journals. Silvana, now the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sakira. I try to share my screen. Can you see it?
Not yet.
Not yet?
No, I haven't seen.
Okay, I try again. Just a second. No?
No, I see your screen, but not your presentation.
Now can you see?
Yes, I think I see your screen, but maybe you open your presentation.
I have opened.
Yeah, because I see your desktop.
Okay, I try again. Sorry, guys. We have checked many times. Okay, try again. I can see the slides.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
Okay. So can you see now? Still see? Can you still see?
Not from my computer.
Okay. Okay, try again. Now can you see?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I see.
Okay. It's in full screen now? Can you see in full screen?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Okay, thanks. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Sekiro, and for the nice introduction, and Christoph also for putting Operandum into a wider context. What we do today is to introduce to you the Operandum project. If the slides goes, just a second. The slides takes a bit of a while. Yeah, should be with you, right? Confirm me because it's a bit slow. Okay, so what we have seen before, that natural-based solutions are new solutions that can be used to mitigate the effect of extreme weather or natural disasters that are related to climate change. Some of the pictures that have already been shown by Christoph before, it gives you a snapshot of what climate can do to our territories, flooding or storm surge, or at the other end, we have also droughts. These are all important let's say, issues that the society has to face. So what can we do, and what Operandum does to respond to those, say, challenges? So what we can do, and what and how Operandum was put in place was to start with thinking that natural-based solutions could be used in a way that could be designed in adequate form for specific territories, could be developed, could be deployed, could be demonstrated, and also this could be a way to promote its spread via business exploitation. To be more specific, we require that NBS should be science evidence-based. And this is some of the challenges that we have nowadays. We have in the world lots of examples, best practices, all showing, or some showing, participatory processes. However, the science evidence in future climate are still limited. So what we promote and we try to do in our project is to try to put in place a multi-level stakeholder engagement, so to leverage widest possible NBS acceptance. And at the same time, we try to strengthen the local frameworks for NBS-based policies. And to do that, we try to push technology and innovation whenever possible. Basically, all I said can be summarized in this map here. First of all, for a solution to take place, it should be grounded on a specific territory. So acceptance is strategic for promotion of MBS. At the same time, we need a certain tools to show that the solution we adopt is effective. To do that, we can use numerical modeling. We also rely on careful design. We try to push new solutions that are innovative, that are technological viable, and also we try to monitor at the same time the multi-level impacts that we may obtain by adopting a certain solution. Also, we try to map at the same time multiple risks and others. Of course, we need on the side a set of multi-level indicators that finally will be helpful in deriving the acceptance of certain MBS. If we go quickly in who we are and give a glance on the consortium Operandum, we have 26 partners spread in 14 countries and 10 sites that we call open-air laboratories that I will describe during my presentation. Just to put our partners on a map, we and also our sites, we have here certain number different partners per countries. For instance, in Italy we have 5. We also have a site and partner in Finland, in Germany, in Greece, and we have also Austria, UK, and Ireland, and also we have extra-European sites with China and also Australia. All, as you can see from the map, around the main sites, those that we call OAL, we have a number of partners that help into implementing a specific and innovative MBS. And of course, there are other partners like Naturalea, University of Delft, and PNO, and of course Unesco, that complete the picture. What we do is to put the open-air laboratory at the center of our work. Open-air laboratory is a new concept that we developed for Operandum project that is based on the idea that science, technology, that impact on the territories should be done in a participatory form. We will see some examples during this presentation. So basically we have our open-air laboratory in those countries, and in the project we move from the foundation to the evidence building, consolidation, and outreach and impact. So as the names suggest, the foundation is to try to gather examples from the literature, to critically review them, and the evidence building is made by a combination of techniques that are monitoring, numerical modeling, and also some other techniques to evaluate the impact, not only on a specific solution, but how it works across the different spheres that are interested by the problem. But also we complete the picture by the consolidation, and we will show what this means, and also the outreach is what we are doing today, for instance. But going into details, as I said, Operandum try to promote an holistic view, still grounded on specific examples. We try to target a large number of hazards. In fact, we focus on 8 major hazards, and we try to address by considering their multi-spatial scale, the different climatic conditions, but also the different sociocultural assets and the different ecosystem and habitats. It is important to note that as we saw from the previous presentation, that the usage of natural-based solutions is not new. We have different examples. Here in this slide, we show though how specific MBS types have been used to address, to mitigate specific hazards. And so we can see here, for instance, floods, storm surge, landslides, droughts, heat waves, and also I will not go into the details, but the figure gives you an impression that the variety of solutions that have been used. As we can see that in the middle of this slide, we see that storm surge, landslides and droughts still have room for an investment of MBS. So they basically have been treated less in terms of MBS solutions. I will invite you to read the paper, but what we can also see that there are different, when we tackle these massive problems, we need to go into details of the specific hazards. For instance, one could think for storm surge or for marine environment that one variable to consider is the wave height. And please take this in mind, because I will show you some examples on that. Also, in the evaluation of how feasible those MBS are, one should consider also what are the benefits versus the cost. And here there are some examples. So this is something also that we take into consideration in OPERANDUM. Going again into some detail of our OEL, just I will go very quickly because probably I will run out of time very soon. So starting from Austria, the Austria OEL focus on landslides, and here it's we identify this specific site because in a way is limited enough that can be considered as a laboratory. So we can identify few variables that are related to extreme event, and we have in place a set of instrumentation to monitor both the movement of the landslide, but also the meteorology, so the rainfall and also the frequency of extreme events. What we do here, and we are implementing different MBS. One is the optimization of the forest management with respect to hydrology, but also natural sealing of leaky streams and channels. Cutting-edge, of course, monitoring system, as I mentioned before, is essential to go in such detail. Also, for instance, in Finland, where the problem is to maintain the good quality of the water, and so to prevent that deterioration of the purity of the water when there is extreme rain, and here there are in place several actions. I will not go into other details, because if I succeed, I wanted to show you and you will have time also to look yourself on a better description of those OEL. For instance, going to our website. Can you still see my website? Can you see my screen?
I don't think we can see your screen.
Okay. Can just a second. Okay, I'll go back. Okay. Stop, and if I try to share again my screen, okay, desktop. Do you see my screen now? My website?
Yes.
Yes, we see the open air laboratories. Yeah.
Okay, good. This is something I invite. So it's better. So you see that it's all, you can all do with me what I'm doing. So if you go on the site, we basically have a description of all our OEL in detail. So we'll not do this all of them, so but you can do, but I wanted to show something. So we were talking, for instance, about OEL Finland, yeah. And so here, besides the beautiful picture, we can see how detailed the type of implementation we are doing in our site. So basically, we start from detail mapping of the level of the water, and on top of that, we try to introduce new techniques, new MBS that could prevent and this deterioration of the water. You may understand that what is important that whatever do, as these are actually laboratory, we need to monitor the level of the water before the implementation, during the implementation, and after the implementation. So this is all done through the site, through the course of the project. So you can see all this. So I will not bother too much with the details and go to another point that I would like to make. That is the following. One of the strategic, let's say, tool that OPERANDUM uses for demonstrating that our MBS are actually effective in the context, in the geographical, cultural context they are, we also combine not only the monitoring on the field, but also let's say monitoring in scale, like laboratory. So I show you, for instance, that in the OEL Italy, where we deal with different hazards like river flooding, but also coastal erosion and also storm surge. What we do specifically for the protection of the river is to reconstruct into the laboratory the type of flow that we may have in extreme conditions, and verify in a scaled form how effective new plants, new MPS could mitigate the flooding itself. So here, for instance, we can see a reproduction in some of our engineering lab. This is a water flume where we can control and test, for instance, the level of the water, and also to verify in the lab if a given solution is an effective one before putting into the environment. Okay, so this is just to give you a flavor of what we can actually do, and we are doing in Operandum, and I continue with my presentation. Can you see still my presentation now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so basically, as I have said, I invite you to go on on the web and verify yourself the type of activities that we are doing. But another point I would like to make in my presentation, and that is the following. All these activities that we are doing in a laboratory way, in laboratory approach, is cannot be done, could have not been done if we didn't have a multiple level of stakeholder engagement. So basically, the engagement was key in every all, acting at a different level. You may understand that. When we operate on a common territory, we have different interests depending on our expertise, on our knowledge. So basically, our stakeholder can be mapped in terms of knowledge-based organization, companies, association, public bodies, and policymakers. All of them will have a role into the value chain that helps ultimately to make this implementation possible. So if we go forward into this, we see and go back into the picture. We go back to the picture I showed earlier into development of our project. As I said, if we put the oil at the center, it is still important to understand and to put our intervention into international context. And so what we did is try to learn from the literature if there were examples that could be used in our already identified sites, and we tried then to map those practice into a wider context, so that to help the upscaling and the replication. But an important message I would like to give today is that despite the action we do, we need to be aware that the solution that we implement in current, let's say, climate, should last into the future. So as a part of our evidence building, we are trying to evaluate utilizing climate projections and to see what will be the actual conditions of the area where those MBS are implemented. So this is an important part for us. In fact, here there are this graph show different projections using different emission scenarios for two periods. Here we evaluate, or we show the change of precipitation. This is to give you an idea that when we select our MPS, we need to put, we also need to look into the future to see if this is still an effective measure. I will not go more than that, but just because I like this type of work, and show you also how we are linked to the upfront interpretation of science and extreme events. Here I show you an example, for instance, of a storm surge that happens in the coast of the North Adriatic, so in Italy, and that was tremendous, because we had for the Adriatic to have a wave height of over 4 meters is extraordinary. And so for this event, and starting from this event, this is something that we will try to replicate also for other hazards. We tried to map also the development of the cyclones that occurred over the Mediterranean, and also to evaluate how the meteorological events impacted onto the sea level rise. And this is, you can see on the bottom graph on the left, the variation of the significant wave height, and also this type of information are very important, because if we can upscale and formalize, of course this will be very important for those that need to evacuate or to take measures in a given territory, because here we can see not only the peak but also the duration of the event. And this type of analysis can be done, are ongoing in different OEL for the specific hazard. Okay. Now I will conclude, if I have just 1 minute, to say how we do the consolidation. Well, you may wonder, where are all these data? How can we actually impact on those very difficult teams? Well, what we do in Operandum is, first of all, we are developing a new web-based platform that is called JOIKP. Many partners are involved. In addition to University of Bologna, there is also, of course, not also, mainly CAIO services that are in charge of the development, but also Unesco, and many partners, all partners are contributing here, because what we do is to promote from scratch a new designed, interactive, open source, interoperable, user-centric and flexible platform that will allow not only to store all the data we have in Operandum, so through a very dedicated data management that allows you to share, store, harmonize all the data related to MBS together with their metadata, but also there is a tool that is based on WebGIS that allow to georeference data and also to take into consideration the multi-source of the risk, the MBS policies, business opportunities, etc. And also there is another tool that allows to explore also existing examples. So not only you have a hub for our data, but also this is connected with existing cases. But and last not least, also allow to search for relevant policies at a global, national and local level. So will be an instrument that will allow all of us to identify what is the most suitable MBS. Well, it was not last and least. Actually, we can also add the latest form of gathering data that is based on crowdsourcing. And also, we have an interactive engine for social ecological risk analysis, but also recommendation, and also this will allow to support risk mitigation management. Where we are, we have then already the first release release in September 19, and we will have a new release in January 2021, where we will have a new interface where all tools are tailored to the needs of each user profile. In fact, you will see through the following webinars some more details with respect to the platform, but also the other aspect of the project. And with this, I think that I have concluded my talk.
Thank you very much, Silvana, for your presentations. No, I think OPERANDUM project is very unique because we have a multi-stakeholder approach, and we also try to do a science-based, and also we try to count the cost per benefit. I think this has been discussed among the RR experts why we cannot scale up nature-based solutions. Because some people say that because only environmentalists are working on this, not including other civil societies or government and so on. So no, I think the concept of the OPERANDUM is very interesting, very unique, and try to fill the gap of these nature-based solutions. So okay, we have a question that if we can see the recording, yes, we are going to upload the presentations on the website later. And then, yeah, if you have questions, please write it on the chat box. And actually, we received one questions from test 4 Bekele. I think that test 4 asked us about agricultural cut has been raised by, about agriculture and wildfire. And if maybe I copy paste the question again at the chat box, and if Christophe or Silvana can pick it up, yeah, please.
Silvana, if you allow me, I can quickly give it a shot, and then you can build that.
I understand if it was for me or for you.
No, I think the person refers to a slide that I showed on Estrela Geopark in Portugal, which is traditionally a patchwork. It's a pastoral area. It's a mountainous area. It's a patchwork of grazing grounds, agricultural grounds, and forests as well. And since the end of the 19th century, they actually invested in planting basically pine trees and later eucalyptus, which are highly inflammable, of course, and very prone to wildfires. But thanks to that preservation of that combination of that diversity of grazing grounds and forests, they managed to control the wildfires that, as they have been spreading on parts of Portugal. And I think that's the lesson. I would not plead here for cutting forests in favor of agricultural grounds as a disaster risk reduction measure. This would probably bring us a little bit too far. But it maybe just to finalize here, I think there is no silver bullet when it comes to combating wildfires. Unfortunately, we're becoming pretty good at it because we have to practice this a lot. I mean, it's on the rise. You see it in large parts of the world. We're drawing lessons from that. And I think there's an interesting study, for example, in Australia as well, where we're going back to the indigenous practices and became a little bit the gold standard in fire prevention, as it has been practiced in the north of Australia. It's a combination of clearing forest to avoid that it's actually a tinderbox, but also practicing preventive firing to form breaches between large parts of forests so that the fire cannot spread. So I don't know if this is a response to the question here of the person, but I will be glad to provide more detail. Maybe Silvana has something to say about this as well.
Well, I think this is, you covered enough, and I think that what we showed today is a combination of what are examples, what are the main challenges and what as individuals can do to really show that what we do is effective. This is important, and you may think, the person that asked the question may think that my answer doesn't fit. Actually, it fits, because we really need to, Operandum is made by people, maybe now it's more than 100, but the idea is that we wanted to demonstrate that we cannot just go on the field and do a solution without having tested it. Okay, so it is important, maybe certain practice help, as Christoph is saying, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work, but what is important is, whenever possible, before implementing something, have some evidence that is really effective. The problem that I wanted to share is don't forget that climate change will impact significantly on most of our territories, and to look at the data and try to connect any engineering practice into this scientific, let's say, data that we have for the future should be the common way, or the good way of protecting our territories. So it's very general, and I tried the opportunity to respond to another question of Ala, I think, that is saying where that architecture, engineering, construction fits. This is all about this. MBS, and maybe Christoph highlighted this, MBS is promoting a new way of constructing, because our, by showcase in project like this, and we are really thankful at the Commission for having granted the project, etc., and all the good partners that are working by also putting their heart in this project, is that we wanted to really verify how the typical engineering practice could be complemented by regaining what nature can do. So I'm saying in very simple words, but I think the new class of engineers, on the architects, should look at taking this example for nature and put in a wider context. So there is lots to do, lots of work to be done, and the young people could go into this direction, especially those that are in less developed countries, that unfortunately are those that will be more affected tsunami, by extreme monsoons, and also extreme droughts. So searching new plans, and also trying to put actions whose results, whose feedback will be evident in the future, are really something that the new generation, but also us that are new anymore, but not so young anymore, but we should take as a civil responsibility.
Thank you very much, Silvana and Christoph. And we have another 3 questions. It's more about the setup of the project. First one is about the geo knowledge platform. I think we have a question from India. Does this platform include India about data, etc.? Maybe I just go through all the questions. I can give you later. And the second question is about how, maybe you already touched upon, how architecture engineer can play a role in this project. And the last question is about, does this project, does Operandum include drought? So these are the 2 questions.
Okay. The first one on India, no, not currently, but we are really open. So if there is an interest, please be in touch with me, and we will see how to make a connection. We want to promote JRKP worldwide, and so more cases are welcome, and we will facilitate. So please be in touch with us. Regarding droughts, yes, we have some, the Chinese, I didn't speak about this, in North China are looking at droughts, and there they are experimenting actually different plants that on one end could be more resistant in extreme, let's say, in a higher temperature, and also they are trying to set in place new way of collecting water, for instance. What we will do in addition, whatever case we don't have implemented, we will be using some numerical model, at least to test the response of vegetation of MBS to some specific meteorological variable. So we complement, whenever possible, certain suggested solution that maybe we have this suggested solution from the literature or from our laboratories, and we test by numerical modeling.
Okay, thank you very much, Silvana. And I think we also received a message from the participant from India that he wants your contact information. So,
yeah, my email. I didn't put my email, but maybe some of the organizers, Zara, can share emails.
Yeah, we will share. So yeah, we are a little bit over time, but if any of you have any questions, please don't hesitate to write on the chat box. Yes, we wait for a minute for any questions.
Hope you enjoyed that. This is important thing.
Yeah. So while we are waiting for the potential questions, we would like to share with you another webinar, which will be held on 18th November from 1:30 European time. This is another Operandum webinar like this. And the title of this webinar, next webinar, will be Assessing and Co-creating Nature-Based Solutions to Climate Change, Benefits, Barriers, and Best Practices. Maybe I copy-paste the informations in the chat box. Okay, it doesn't look well, but yeah. Yes, it will be 18th November from 1:30 Central European Time. Another next Operandum webinar. Yes. Yes. Zara says yes, we're going to send another reminder. Okay, so if we don't have further questions or comments, thank you very much, Christophe and Silvana, for the presentation. It was, they're very interesting and they're very informative. So I hope the participants learned a lot from how this random projects are going.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And yes, and see you at the next webinar on November 18th, 1:30 Central European Time. I repeat it again. And thank you very much for your time and participation. And thank you very much again for Christophe and Silvana for your time and presentations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. See you, Vanna. Bye-bye.
Thanks to you. Bye.
Bye.